Prompt engineering is one of the highest leverage skills that you can learn in 2023. You might have already seen the news. This new profession can pay anywhere between $250,000 and $335,000 per year, but most people only scratch the surface when using ChatGPT. Today I want to give you a quick introduction to ChatGPT and prompt engineering. I'll also show you how to build an instructional prompt from scratch. These prompting techniques and principles will level up your prompting game and will help you save time in your job or business. Let's dive in. Today we're going to start off with a quick introduction to ChatGPT and prompt engineering. The first thing you need to realize is that ChatGPT is very much like a computer program. It understands words or natural language instead of requiring code. What can make prompt engineering challenging is that it can often give unpredictable results. Your job as a prompt engineer is to deliver results that are more reliable and therefore more valuable. How do you learn to give ChatGPT better input? The first thing you need to do is learn how to give it better instructions using the right words or prompts. What does the prompt engineering process look like? The first thing that you do is that you tell ChatGPT what you want. This is your input text. The next thing you do is you explain how you want your output to be formatted. And then lastly, you receive your output and then you evaluate that output to see if it's aligned with your needs. If it is not exactly what you expected, then you go back to the first step and you again tell ChatGPT what you want to try and refine the resulting output. As you can see, high quality input gives high quality output. So therefore, better prompts give better results. Another important thing to note is that the more input you can give, the better ChatGPT's output will be. So you can use multiple prompts to get the exact output that you're looking for. In other words, you can go through a process of iteration until you reach your required goal. This is important because ChatGPT 3.5 has a memory of the conversation of up to 3,000 words before it forgets the first thing that you spoke about. ChatGPT 4 has just been released and the memory capacity has been increased quite significantly up to 25,000 words. So this has implications for long-form content creation, extended conversations, as well as document search and analysis. Next, we're going to look at the 8 best practices for prompt engineering. So let's build a prompt together. First thing you need to do is to make sure that you always give clear and effective instructions to ChatGPT. This means you should always be specific, descriptive, and as detailed as possible, and make sure to leave out all the fluff. Here is the beginning of a prompt. We first start by defining our goals and our outcomes. In this case, we're asking ChatGPT to write a short introduction as well as provide some article topics. Next, we need to get a bit more specific. So in this case, we're going to provide a topic, and that topic is going to be artificial intelligence. Next, we're going to explain the format and length required. We're going to be asking for a 10-point numbered list. Then we need to expand upon our requirement with some contextual relevance. So in this case, we're going to be asking how artificial intelligence may affect knowledge workers, as well as asking ChatGPT to discuss the risks and opportunities around artificial intelligence. Next, we need to ask for a style or a voice. In this case, we're going to ask ChatGPT to write in the voice of Isaac Asimov, and then we can provide an example. So in this case, we're giving the first bullet point in the list, which is workers who can leverage AI and adapt to new technologies will likely thrive in the future job market. And lastly, we can provide some leading words to give ChatGPT a clue as to what to do next. In this case, we've just put the word output with colon to suggest that the output should follow. Once you receive the output back, you can go through the process of iteration to improve on the output that you received. Next, we're going to take the prompt that we created and give it to ChatGPT. You'll see that the default ChatGPT 3.5 is selected here. ChatGPT 4 is, however, now available. Although it is stronger on reasoning and conciseness, you'll also see that it is a slower model. And so we'll stick to GPT 3.5 for this demonstration. We're just going to copy the prompt that we wrote earlier into the chat box. Here, ChatGPT is introducing itself as Isaac Asimov, a science fiction writer, proceeds to give us a list of 10 ideas, the rise of AI in the workplace and its impact on knowledge workers, benefits of AI for knowledge workers such as automation of mundane tasks, potential for job displacement, importance of upskilling and reskilling, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, you can decide that maybe this is not detailed enough. So you could say, for example, please provide more details for each bullet point, and off it goes. All right. So you can also decide that perhaps you want to change the topic slightly. So let's say change the topic to jobs and industries that LLMs are likely to disrupt. We can also decide to change the format slightly. So let's say that we want headings and paragraphs for each item, as well as bullet points for all the key takeaways. And perhaps we want to change the voice and style. Here's one that has worked quite well for me in the past, using Strunk and White's elements of style. So now it's giving us a list of jobs that AI can potentially disrupt in future. And then for each one, it gives a short bullet point summary. So for lawyers, LLMs can review and analyze contracts quickly and accurately, which could disrupt the need for lawyers to perform this task manually. LLMs can be used for legal research, potentially reducing the need for lawyers to conduct extensive research manually. LLMs can be used for code generation, code optimization, and debugging. Customer service can be used for chatbots and voice assistants. Doctors, medical records, medical diagnosis, medical research, and the list goes on, journalists, etc. So of course we could ask it to continue with more examples, and now it's going to give us more jobs that could potentially be disrupted. So business and finance, disrupted by financial analysis, fraud detection, investment analysis, marketing and advertising, content creation, social media management, and the list goes on. So as you can see, this is pretty powerful once you get a good prompt going, and then you continue to iterate to ask it for more details or further information or expand upon your topic or the context that you give it. What are some good use cases for ChatGPT? ChatGPT can be pretty much used for any repetitive task that you do, and here are some ideas to get you started. First one that ChatGPT is great for is brainstorming ideas. It can come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of variations on themes. It can mix and match things, and it can generate them and spit them out really fast. This is definitely a good thing to try and to apply it to lots of different areas of your work. The next thing you can do is get it to explain terms or logic. So if there is some writing or code that you don't exactly understand, ChatGPT is great at breaking that down into simpler language or write at the level of a 12th grader. It is also good for writing code functions. So if you are wanting to speed up your coding work, or even if you're looking to get into some programming, this is a great way to generate code and also to understand how code works. The next thing you can look at is creating marketing or content plans. So again, this relates to brainstorming ideas. ChatGPT can come up with a lot of different ideas, which you can then mix and match to come up with your ideal solution. And then you can also use ChatGPT to create templates for various different things, such as presentations like the one you're watching now. Lastly, ChatGPT is also very good for summarizing things like books or videos. So if you have a lot of video content, let's say a long lecture to get through on YouTube, then you can use ChatGPT to summarize that and save yourself the time of watching the long video or just checking it out before you watch the whole thing. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to make sure you see more stuff from me. I'll keep you updated on everything happening in tech and AI right now. And if you want to nerd out on more cool futuristic AI tools, head over to aiwebguide.com and join the newsletter. Also check out the links in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.
Write a song about a dog that turns to crime to feed its bone addiction. Here are 30 mind-blowing things you can do with Chat GPT right now. You'll find timestamps in the description. Let's do this. You can quickly grow your knowledge by absorbing a few bestsellers over a few coffees one lazy afternoon, like this. Summarize Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich is a personal development and self-help book by Napoleon Hill. It was published in 1937.
Or you can create a web page. Create a simple HTML page. Let's create something useful for a website. Create a HTML VAT calculator. Now let's do some JavaScript. Create a JavaScript countdown to December 31st, 2023. And a PHP widget. Create a PHP mortgage calculator. Need help with your coding? No problem. Let's copy this code and break it in a few places. And then let's feed it back into the AI.
It looks like there's a missing plus operator in this JavaScript function. Here's the corrected version.
Now let's do some copywriting. Improve this headline. This is the best course to learn to program in Python.
Here are a few suggestions. Discover the ultimate Python programming course. Master Python with the top-rated course. Become a Python pro with the most comprehensive course. Take your Python skills to the next level with this unbeatable course.
Impressive. What about some marketing help? Write a slogan for a coffee bean company.
Wake up to the taste of quality. Other potential slogans for a coffee bean company could include: experience the art of coffee, savor the flavor of freshly roasted beans, discover your perfect blend, brew to perfection, one bean at a time.
I know you're impressed. What about some legal help? Write a legal letter demanding my landlord address a mold and damp issue in the home I rent.
Dear landlord, I am writing to demand that you address the serious issue of mold and damp in the home that I rent from you. As you are aware, the presence of mold and damp can have serious health consequences, including respiratory problems.
Let's do another one. Create a 6-month employment contract for a freelance graphic designer.
Dear freelance graphic designer, we are pleased to offer you a 6-month employment contract as a freelance graphic designer, effective, start date. During the term of this contract, you will be responsible for providing graphic design.
Can we get help finding success? How do I grow a YouTube channel?
Here are some tips for growing a YouTube channel. 1. Find your niche. Choose a specific topic or theme for your channel, and stick to it. This will help you attract a dedicated audience.
Let's do another one. How do I grow a brand on Amazon FBA?
Here are some tips for growing a brand on Amazon FBA. 1. Choose a unique and high-quality product. To stand out on Amazon, you need to offer a product that is unique and of high quality.
How about writing a story? Write a short story about a cat named Mimi.
Mimi was a beautiful white cat with piercing green eyes. She lived with her owner, Mrs. Johnson, in a cozy little house on the edge of town. Mimi loved nothing more than lounging in the sunbeam that streamed through the living room window.
Watch this. Now update the story and add a moral about friends being important.
As they walked, they came across a little boy playing with a ball in his front yard. Mimi watched him intently, and before Mrs. Johnson knew it, Mimi had pounced on the ball and was running away with it. From that day on, Mimi and the little boy became the best of friends.
Oh, it gets better. Let's get help with that diet we've been putting off for so long. Create a 2,000 calorie 7-day meal plan.
Here is a sample 7-day meal plan that totals approximately 2,000 calories per day.
Update it with these macros: protein 35% and carbs 55%.
Here is a sample 7-day meal plan that totals approximately 2,000 calories per day and follows the 35% protein, 55% carb macro ratio.
Yeah, now make it vegetarian. You see, everyone's included. Oh dear, I forgot about my best man's wedding speech. I wonder if... Write a wedding speech for a groom named Brian who is marrying Jenny.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Name, and I have the honor of standing here as Brian's best man. I've known Brian for years now, and in that time, I've come to know him as one of the kindest, most thoughtful people I've ever met.
We need to invite people. Write an email inviting people to my wedding.
Dear guest, we are so excited to share with you that partner and I are getting married. We would be honored if you would join us in celebrating this special occasion. The wedding ceremony will be held on...
And tweets. Write a tweet about it.
We're getting married. Can't wait to celebrate this special occasion with all of our loved ones.
And the other one. And the Facebook post.
Exciting news. Jenny and I are getting married. We can't wait to celebrate this special day with all of our friends and family.
And the text.
Hey, just wanted to let you know that Jenny and I are getting married. We're so excited to celebrate this special occasion with all of our loved ones. Can't wait to see you there.
Let's take a moment here. Note that the AI knows what I'm talking about, so I don't have to keep repeating the context. It really is an open-ended chat. I can ask it for a meal plan and then tell it to include or remove some foods, and I don't have to mention the meal plan again. I can ask it to make changes to my story just by saying change the cat to a dog. And I don't have to keep mentioning the wedding just to get tweets and posts and emails and whatever else I need. And here's some more. Let's get help selling something. Write a cold email to a dog grooming business to sell them SEO services.
Dear business, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Your Name, and I am the owner of Your Company, a digital marketing agency specializing in search engine optimization, SEO.
Turn it into a text.
Hi, business. I noticed that your website could benefit from some SEO services.
Now let's get some help writing an article. Write 5 titles for a blog post about learning to use AI.
1. 5 tips for getting started with AI. 2. The Beginner's Guide to Understanding and Using AI. 3. AI for Dummies, a simple introduction. 4. Mastering AI, a step-by-step guide. 5. From novice to expert, how to become an AI pro.
I like Title 3. Write an outline for the article using Title 3.
Introduction. Definition of artificial intelligence, AI. Brief overview of the different types of AI and their uses. 2. Setting up your AI environment.
Let's keep pushing. Write the introduction.
Welcome to AI for Dummies, a simple introduction. In this blog post, we will be covering the basics of artificial intelligence, AI, and providing a step-by-step guide for those who are new to the field.
Now let's get help with some ad copy, shall we? Create 5 Google ads to promote a pet grooming business. Okay, let's get creative. Write a song about a dog that turns to crime to feed its bone addiction.
I was just a pup when I found my first bone, but little did I know it would lead me down a road alone. I couldn't get enough, I needed more and more. I started digging up the neighborhood I couldn't ignore. I'm a criminal dog, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll rob and steal, my bone addiction never breaks. I can't help myself, I'm a victim of my crave. I'm a criminal dog, I'll do anything to save. I tried to quit, I tried to resist. But the temptation was too strong, I couldn't persist. I turned to a life of crime, it was the only way. To feed my bone addiction every single day. I'm a criminal dog, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll rob and steal, my bone addiction never breaks. I can't help myself, I'm a victim of my crave. I'm a criminal dog, I'll do anything to save. I know it's wrong, I know it's not right. But I can't control it, I'm trapped in this fight. I'll do whatever it takes to get my next fix. Am a criminal dog, and I can't resist.
That was funny. Let's carry on. Output the first page of Alice in Wonderland.
Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversations?
Translated into Spanish.
Alice estaba empezando a cansarse de sentarse junto a su hermana en la orilla del río, y de no tener nada que hacer.
It's good. Let's create my next video. Create a YouTube video script for a review about Chat GPT.
Hey everyone, your name, here. Today I want to talk to you about Chat GPT, a new artificial intelligence chatbot that's been getting a lot of buzz recently.
I should have just done that. Let's learn a new skill. Teach me how to use Photoshop.
Sure. Here are some basic steps to get started with Adobe Photoshop.
Now teach me how to create a motion blur. Okay, so this cat keeps coming round and now it's with us and we haven't given it a name yet. I wonder. Come up with a few name ideas for a cat using wordplay.
Perfection. Fairy tale. Claudia. Whiskertastic. Positively perfect.
Okay, now let's create something useful that we can actually sell. Create a Chrome extension to print a page to PDF. And yes, Chat GPT gives you the instructions to package this and upload it to your browser as an extension. You know when it's time to buy something for someone and you spend a long time thinking about it? Suggest 10 birthday gifts for a 40-year-old man. Now you're covered. Let's play a game. Pretend that you're a choose-your-own-adventure video. Set the scene and give me 4 options to proceed to the next stage.
You are a brave adventurer exploring the ancient ruins of a long-lost civilization. As you make your way through the crumbling corridors, you come to a fork in the path. Do you 1. Go left, towards the faint sound of running water. 2. Go right, towards the faint glow of light. 3. Continue straight, towards the ominous darkness. 4. Turn back and search for a different route. Which path do you choose?
I could play this all day. Okay, let's get help preparing for a trip. List what items I need to go on a trip on the London to Amsterdam train. See, I would have forgotten that. Okay, I'm hungry. Give me a recipe for Spanish omelette. It's time to create a job application. Write a job application to OpenAI.
Dear hiring manager, I am writing to express my interest in the position role at OpenAI. As a field degree graduate with experience in relevant experience, I am confident that my skills and passions make me a strong fit for this opportunity.
Update it with the following. I have a BSc in computing from the University of Sesame Street.
As a graduate with a BSc in computing from the University of Sesame Street.
No, we don't need a job. We can make it on our own. Write the script for the next Hollywood blockbuster.
The hero, a rugged and determined man in his 30s, sits at his desk, staring intently at a map spread out in front of him.
Adapted for Bollywood.
The hero, a rugged and handsome man in his 30s, sings and dances with his trusted sidekick, a beautiful and loyal AI robot, as they make their way to his desk.
Let's follow the money. List 10 ideas for $1 million product in 2023. You may want to pause the screen there and read it a few times. Okay, let's lighten the mood. Tell me an extremely funny joke that involves 3 characters.
3 characters walk into a bar: a chicken, a sheep, and a cow. The chicken turns to the sheep and says, "I can't believe we're drinking at a bar." The sheep turns to the cow and says, "Moo moo moo, I can't believe we're drinking at a bar either." The cow turns to the bartender and says, "Hey, why the long face?"
So far, we've replaced copywriters, storytellers, script writers, coders, content writers, social media managers, party planners, dietitians, and even comedians. Maybe not fully. Yet. But this is a hint of what's coming. ChatGPT is still offline. It's still a baby. It's not yet accessing information in real time. When it does, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hi everyone, my name is McKay. I am a software developer and I spend all my time working on various AI projects. And today I'm going to be showing you how to build my Program GPT web app here. So what Program GPT is, it is a OpenAI powered search tool. So it's basically a Q&A bot that utilizes OpenAI's text embedding model to embed all of the essays from Paul Graham. So if you don't know who Paul Graham is, he's a famous tech entrepreneur and investor. He's the guy who started Y Combinator, which is the most successful and the most famous startup accelerator. So he's pretty popular in the tech industry, and he also happens to be a really great writer. And if I pull up his essays here, he has like 200 essays. He's a really good writer. He writes about all sorts of stuff, a lot about startups. So a lot of people find his writing really helpful. So what I did was I built a web scraper that scraped through all of his essays, grabs the text, chunks them into sections, and embeds them with OpenAI embeddings. And so what that means is we're basically taking this text, feeding it into a model that spits out a vector, which is effectively just a bunch of numbers that represents kind of the semantic meaning of this text. So if I just show you how this works really quick, how do I start a startup? Okay, so what this is going to do, it's going to take our search query here. It's going to embed this itself. Okay, so we're turning this into a vector of a bunch of numbers. We're going to go ahead and hit send. And what this is doing is it's hitting the OpenAI API, specifically the Chat GPT model, which is GPT 3.5. It is taking all of these passages that we're performing similarity search on in our database. We've uploaded all of these different chunks of text from his essays into our database. We're performing a similarity search function on that. We're taking these passages, we're injecting that into a prompt that gives the model context that it can provide an answer to our query. All right, so if we try another one, what is a hacker maybe? Okay, so we get different results here, obviously, because this is a different search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to build. We're not going to build the full version of this, but I'm going to show you how to build all kind of the tricky stuff underneath that makes this work. And if you are curious, I have a repo here. It's open source, so this entire code is open source. If you want to go through it any time or you get lost, I'll have the link for this, so go check it out. I released it about 2 weeks ago. It got pretty popular on GitHub, and just a lot of people have been asking me to do this, so I'm going to give it a shot here. So if you do like this video, drop a like. It does actually help me know if this is worth my time. I really try and go off people's feedback. So if you do find it helpful, let me know. If you have any feedback for me, I would love constructive feedback in the comments. So this is going to be my first video here. Hopefully we do a lot more. So this is going to be kind of the trial run. So let's get to it. So I'm going to go open my terminal here that I have right here. And what we're going to do right off the bat, maybe I'll move this off the screen, hide this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to create a Next.js app. So what I need to run is npx create next app at latest. With we're going to be using TypeScript. So our tech stack we're going to be using here is Next.js with TypeScript, and we're going to be using Tailwind CSS for the UI. So that's kind of the core of what we're going to be working with here. So I'm just going to run this in my terminal. It's going to ask us to give a project name. We'll just call it embedding PG, I guess. Okay, I'm just going to use all the defaults here. That's just kind of how I like to roll with things. So we're going to sit here for a sec while this installs, and then we're going to we're going to move into that directory. So we're going to cd to embedding PG. Okay, so now we're in that directory, and we're going to open this in VS Code. So I'm just going to run code space dot, and this is going to open in VS Code. I'm just going to trust that real quick. Okay, let's go full screen here. So what I'm going to do now, we'll work with VS Code's terminal, and we're going to do a few setup things really quick. So first, I'm going to, we need to install Tailwind. So we're going to run npm I for install. We're going to give it the developer flag, which is just $D. And for Tailwind, we need Tailwind CES, we need post CES, and we need auto prefixer. Okay, so we need these three things. And then what we need to do is we need to initialize Tailwind. So we're going to run npx tailwind css init-p. Okay, and this is going to init Tailwind. So you're going to see this Tailwind config.js file. And then what you need to do in here is we basically just need to tell it what files it needs to. We just need to tell it what files are going to have Tailwind in it. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this. I have this right here. So you just need to run that or write that in this array. Okay, save that. One other thing we have to do really quick is go into the styles directory in globals CSS. We're just going to delete all of this, and then we need to import the Tailwind directives. Okay, so we're going to go at Tailwind base. We need at Tailwind components, and we need at Tailwind utilities. Okay, we're going to save that. It's complaining at me here. Semicolons. Okay. So now that we have that, we're going to exit out of here. We're going to just do a couple quick file cleanup things. Let's get rid of this home module. We're not going to need that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build the web scraper. So I'm just going to create a new folder here. We're going to call it scripts. Let's call it scripts. And then in scripts, we're going to create a new file. We're going to call it scraper.ts. Okay, so this is where our scraper is going to live. Actually, I'm just going to call it scrape.ts. That's how I prefer to name it. And then we're going to go into our package.json file here. And in here, we're going to create a new script that we can run. We're going to call it scrape. And this needs to be tsx scripts/scrape.ts. Okay, and this is just going to let us run our script like this. If we go run npm run scrape, it's going to run that. And you're going to see it says tsx command not found. We need to install that. So we're going to go npm install tsx, and we'll have that as a dev dependency once again. Should see it pop up here. Okay, and then if we run that command again, it is actually working. It's just complaining because this file is empty. So let's make it not empty. We're going to create a self-invoking asynchronous function here. We'll be using arrow functions. And what we also need to do really quick is we need to install the packages that we're going to be using for our scraper. Okay, so we're going to need Axios, we're going to want to use Cheerio, and we're going to be using a tool called GPT-3-encoder to handle some token stuff. So we'll go ahead and install those. We'll also throw the dependency flag on there. And if you look in your package.json file, you'll notice we have all those installed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and import those. So import Axios from Axios with Cheerio. Maybe I should just really quick explain what all three of these packages are. So Axios is just going to let us make the HTTP request that we need to make to go scrape Paul Graham's website. Cheerio, and the way you need to import this is you need to do import all as Cheerio from Cheerio, and then we'll import the encode function here from GPT-3 encoder. Okay, so we're going to use all three of these things. And Cheerio lets us, as I was saying, it allows us to parse the HTML that we're going to fetch. So you'll kind of see how this works in just a sec. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call it base URL. So this is just going to be the URL of Paul Graham's website. It's going to be http://www.paulgraham.com, just like that. And that's going to give us the base URL of the website. So maybe what I should do here, so let me bring in his website back in here. Drag this down, and I'm going to throw it over here because we are going to be doing some stuff with it. I'm actually going to open up the developer console. Let's put this at the bottom. Give you guys a little bit more viewing room here. Okay. Then if we just inspect the HTML, we're going to go to essays because that's what we're going to be working with. What we need to do is we need to do two things, right? So the objective here with this scrape is we want to take all of this text from each one of these essays and we want to chunk it. In other words, split it up into little sections. And then we want to embed it with OpenAI's embedding tool. And then we want to upload it to our database. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and build the little scraping tool in this section. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a get links function. Okay, and that's going to be an async function that takes in, we actually doesn't need to take in any parameters. And what we're going to do here is first we're going to go ahead and get the HTML so that we can work with it and try and find a way to parse these links off of this web page. So we're going to create a new variable HTML, and this is going to be an Axios GET request to Paul Graham's website. And what we actually want to do here is we need to do base URL, and then we need to do /articles HTML, which is the page that all these links are on. Okay, so that's going to fetch this HTML, and then we're going to load in the HTML to Cheerio, and just kind of the way that just the sort of traditional syntax of Cheerio is to save it in this $sign variable. So that's what we're going to use here. And if I log this, let's actually just log the HTML here. I just want to show you guys how this works. So let's run the get links function. So the way we can run this now is we can go npm run scrape, right? That's that thing we did in the package.json file to create that script. Okay, it is complaining at me. Oh, I accidentally put tsx in here instead of ts. Okay, so let's change that and let's try running it again. And as you can see here, we got all of the HTML from this web page. Okay, so that's what we're going to work with. So web scraping is a little bit of like a half art, half science kind of thing. So I've done sort of my fair share of it. So I can work pretty fast, but if you're new to it, you know, if you're new to trying to get text off of web pages and parse it and do some interesting things with it, let me just kind of walk you through an example of like how I think through this. So what we need to do is we need to sort of look through the HTML here and figure out a pattern as to how this data is stored on this web page. Right, so if you kind of go in and inspect it, You know, we have all these different things. We got this table, everything seems to live in here. And then if you open the body here, maybe we'll click on one of these links to get a little deeper. Okay, you can kind of see how everything's nested. So I'm going to skip through this a little bit because I don't want to get too hung up on the particulars of this. But sort of the pattern I noticed was that there's these tables. So if you see, this is the first table, then there are these like nested tables. And so you can see right here, all of the links, they sort of live in this table right here. So what I want to do is I want to get access to this table so that I can get access to the links inside it. Okay, and the way I'm going to do that is we're going to go create a tables variable, and we're going to use this table selector so that it just selects. So we have all the HTML stored here, and then we're going to pass in the table selector, which just selects the table elements. Okay, and what's cool is we get this each function where we can loop over each one of these tables. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if it is the third table, again, first table here, second table here, third table here with the links. So we're going to check if it is the third table, and you're going to notice this is a 2. That's because the index is 0-based index. So the 2 here actually represents the third table. So if that's true, what we want to do is we want to get all the links off of it. Okay, so we're going to pass in this table here. Sorry, these should be parentheses, excuse me. And we're going to find all of the A tags. Okay, so these are all the link elements here. And then we want to do a similar thing that we just did with these tables, where we're going to loop over each one of these. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the URL off of it. And the way you grab the URL is, again, similar syntax, link, pass in the link there. And we want to get the href attribute off of it, right? Which is what the link is. Cool. And what we also want to do is we want to get the title, which is just the name of the essay. And the way you can get the text off of that is just to call this .text method. And this is going to give us the URL, and it's going to give us the title there. Okay. And we're going to do a quick check here, just make sure that those exist. And I'm going to add one thing here to make sure it ends with .html. So if I click on one of these essays here, you'll notice every single one of his essays is a .html file here. So we're just going to make sure that it matches that syntax so that we don't get any other stray links. Okay. And if that's true, if both of those are true, we're going to create a new variable called link object. And on that object, we want to store the URL and we want to store the title. Okay. And to keep track of all of these, maybe up here, let me clean this up a little bit. Let's have a links array. And I'm going to be typing things here. We're using TypeScript. So we're going to have a URL as a string, and we're going to have the title as a string. Perfect. And then in here, we're going to push the link object. Okay. And then once we loop through all those and push them into the array, then we can return, I don't want to log that. We want to return the links array, right? So in summary, we're getting each one of these links. We're getting the URL and the essay title, and we're going to push it into this. We're going to save it to this links object, and we're going to push that object to the links array. And then once that's all done, we're going to return the links array. Okay. So if I log the links here, what you should see is a giant array here. If we run npm run scrape of all the links with the titles. Boom. Okay, cool. So we got that. So now what we need to do is we need to go into an essay, and we need to get a few things. We need to get the title, we need to get the date, and then we need to get the text. Okay, so we're going to create a get essay function. And we actually want to pass in the URL as a string, and then the title that we got as a string. Okay, and again, that's going to be an asynchronous function. And right here, we're going to repeat a few of the steps here. So again, we're going to create an Axios GET request. And maybe I shouldn't have named this URL, right? Because it's actually just kind of the HTML file. We'll just keep that for now. And what we need to do is we need to do base URL. Again, this is just the base URL of the website. And then we need to go to that individual page, which we have stored here. Okay, again, we're gonna load in the HTML with Cheerio so we can parse through things very easy. And to start here, we're actually gonna take a pause here just for a sec. We're gonna go create some types files. Again, we're using TypeScript, so we're gonna be good with our types here. We're gonna create a types folder. We're gonna create an index.ts file, and we're gonna do two things here. We're actually gonna do three things here. We're gonna create three types. So the syntax for that, we're gonna need to export them. So export type, and we're gonna do PG essay. We are going to do, let's create a PG chunk, right? So this is gonna be a chunked portion of the essay. And then we're also gonna be saving this to a JSON file. So let's just call it PG JSON. And now let's add in all the properties we need, okay? So for an essay, we're gonna need a bunch of stuff. We're gonna have the title as a string. We wanna have that URL as a string. We're gonna grab the date. We're gonna save the content. So this is just the text of the essay as a string. And then now here's some number stuff we're gonna need. We wanna do tokens, and that's gonna be a number, okay? And then we also need to save an array of chunks, and the chunks is going to be an array of the PG chunks. Okay, so this shapes the data of our essays. Now let's shape the data of our PG chunks. So this is, each one of these chunks is what's going to get saved into our database. So we're actually going to be a little repetitive here, just because we do want to keep this data in our database as well, since we're not passing the essays. So we're going to want to get the title again. We're going to be a little bit verbose here and do prepend it with essay underscore URL. Okay, let's do that. Same thing for the date. And we don't really need the essay tokens. Content is just going to be the chunked content, not the whole essay content. So let's just call it content. We're going to want content tokens, which is a number. And then we're going to want to have the embedding, and that is going to be an array of numbers. So type it like so. And then for the JSON, let's just do, let's store the total number of tokens, maybe. Tokens, and then all of the essays, which is just going to be an array of the essays. Okay. So this is kind of, we just kind of defined the data that we're going to be working with here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our scrape.ts file, and let's go ahead and create a new essay. We'll actually use a let here, and what I'm going to be doing is creating, let's just call it essay. Okay, and so we're going to type it as PG essay. It's going to be an object, of course, and we're just going to put all of the empty properties in here. So we're just going to run through this really quick. I'm actually not going to do things here. We need the content, we need the tokens, and we need the chunks. Right, so just if you're not familiar with TypeScript, the reason we do this is, like, for example, if I take out chunks here, we get these sort of nice errors. So it just helps us avoid bugs in our code, and it helps us understand the data, the shape of the data that we're working with, right? So it says chunks is missing, right? So I know, oh, I forgot my chunks right here, okay? So that's kind of why we're doing that. And we're gonna want to do a couple things here. We're gonna want to create the full link. All right, so we're just kind of constructing, let me fix that. Just kind of constructing some of the data that we're gonna be working with here, okay? And then actually, just for organization purposes, I'm going to move that like so, okay? And we're going to change this to, we'll get rid of that. Okay, so we're going to fetch the essay. We're going to load the HTML in here. And if we inspect this again, you're going to notice there's a similar pattern, right? It's kind of the same table thing. So this table, everything's in there. Like if we go to another one, I think this is a little bit longer. you can see everything lives in this table, which this time it's table 1 and table 2. So once again, we're going to select the tables and we want to loop through those. And this time if it's table number 2, so if I equal 1, what we want to do is we want to get the text off of this. Okay. Parentheses table dot text. Okay, so this is going to get all of this text, and that include, right, so this is all the text that is in this table element, which includes the title, includes the date, includes this text. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do a few things just to kind of clean up this data. And I'm just going to speed through this really quickly. It's kind of some of the stuff I noticed initially from scraping it, that it was mostly just spacing issues we're going to fix. So, you know, if you want to slow down and kind of think through what we're doing here, I do recommend that, but I'm just going to speed up and kind of get this part over with because this is just cleaning, which is not the most fun thing. Okay, so we're going to run a replace on this text. And I actually have the regexes all ready to roll right here, so I'm just going to copy and paste them. Okay. Oh, did I not grab that text? Let's remember to grab our text. Okay, so now we can run the replace on this text, and it's going to clean up our text a little bit. And I'm actually going to run one more on this. We're going to chain one more replace on here. And this is mostly just some like weird double space things that happen sometimes in the essay, and we just want to get rid of those. And what we're going to do is we're going to create, let's call this split. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take the clean text. We're going to run a clean text. And we're going to run a match on this. Okay, and once again, I have another regex. So what this does is I noticed the pattern of how to get the date off of here based on some new line characters. And that's all we're doing here. So if I lose you a little bit here, just kind of roll with it. This is just cleaning the text, and we're gonna want to set a date string and then a text without date string here. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna check if this split, so this is actually an array. We want to get the first element off of that array and save it to the date. So this is just the, we're going to want to get that off of split. Sorry. So this is just that date right here, based on how the text comes in from the HTML. And then we're going to want to save text without date to clean text. And we're going to do a replace on here. So what this is, all this is doing is it's taking the date off of this, right? So we have one string, the date string with the date, and then we have the text without date. That's the actual body text of the essay. Okay, so we have those two things, and we're gonna do one more little cleanup step here. Oh, I see what I did here. Move all of this into this tables loop here. Sorry, I knew I had created that earlier. Okay, so what we're gonna do one more cleanup step here, and what we need to do is we just need to remove the new lines. So this is, we're gonna create a new variable called essay text, and we're gonna take text without date, and we're gonna do one more replace and one more regex, and this just removes some of the new line stuff and replaces it with the space. Okay, so now we have that body of text. And we're gonna do one more thing, we're gonna trim it. And all this trim method does is it removes the white space on either side of the string. Okay, so this should be all cleaned up now. And what we're gonna do is we're going to reference this essay here. We're gonna reset some of these properties. Okay, so the title, we got the title coming in from here. URL is actually gonna be the base. We want to save that base URL. slash the file name. Again, I messed up a little bit calling this URL, but just roll with it. And we want to save the date as the date string. We want to save content as the essay text we got. We want to save tokens. And this is going to be the first time we use that encode function from the GPT-3 encoder package. We're going to want to run encode. Did we not import that? Let's import that encode from GPT-3 encoder. And so if you're not familiar with tokens and how tokens work, tokens are basically just like chunks of text. And it's the way that these AI models, some of these large language models process text. So what we're going to do is we're going to encode the essay text. And then what this encode function does is it tokenizes this text. So basically, like a token, like the word one is like one token, the word kind is like one token, of is one token, and then opinion is probably like 2 tokens. So most of you are probably, if you've used the OpenAI APIs before, you're probably familiar with tokens. And then you get the token count off of this once we encode it. You just use the dot link here. Okay, so now we have the token count, and we need that chunks array still. And we're going to handle that in the next step. So for right now, I'm just going to keep that as an empty array. Okay. And then once we get out of this table loop, what we need to do is return the essay. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a for loop over all of these links. I'm just going to do a number-based one so I can show you this. I'm just going to show you the first example here. So let's do if I does not equal 0, break out of this loop, just so I can show you this with one essay. Let's maybe clean this up just a little bit. Let's say essay, or actually link equal links I. Okay, and then again in the get essay function we pass in 2 parameters. We pass in that link URL and the link title here. So let me show you what this does. So what we should do here is we scrape through all the links, and then we're going to loop through each one of these links. And then we're going to pass in the link into the getEssay function, get the essay, and then we should get an object here with all of the data we just set here. So let me clear. We're going to run npm run scrape. And it looks like I made a mistake here. So let's debug this really quick. So we're not even getting the title. Let's make sure this link is right. We'll do a little bit of a live debugging section. Let's make sure we're getting the links, logging that. Sure enough, we're getting the links. Oh, you know what we should do? In this conditional here, in our getLinks function, you can see there's one stray link in here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just add a little check here to make sure the title exists. So as you can see, there's no title here. So it's going to get rid of that. And now this is going to work. Debugging 101. All right. Okay, cool. So now we're getting that. So this is the essay as an object with all of the data, right? So we got the title, we got the date, we got the URL, we got all of the text content, and then we got the token count. Beautiful. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get rid of this so that we get each one of these essays. And we're going to want to create an array here. We'll call it essays. And this is going to be an array of PG essays. And then for each one of these, we're going to want to push the essay into here. If we log our essays here, let's get rid of this log, clean this up a bit. If we run this again, we're going to get all of the essays. So I'm just going to let this run for a sec just to show you them all coming in. And I'm actually going to cancel this. And instead what we're actually going to do is we're going to log this here because that's going to take a little bit. Okay. Console.log essay. And now we can see these come in live. Okay, so as you can see, it's literally going through this entire list, grabbing the link, going into this web page, scraping it, or parsing through it and cleaning up that data as we did in the get essay function, and it's going to spit it out into this essays array. So I'm going to take a break for just 1 sec, and then I'll be back, and we're going to show you how to chunk each one of these essays. Real quick, I noticed an error I made, which explains why we got that weird bug with the essay with the empty title. So if you see right here in the get links, I'm passing in tables, and this is supposed to be this table. So we want to get rid of the S, and coincidentally, I made the same mistake down here in the get essay function. Let's get rid of that essay or the S, save that. Now things should work as intended. So for the last part here, we're going to create a get chunks function. Okay, it's going to be an async function that takes in a PGSA as its only parameter. And what we're going to do in this function is we're going to chunk the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to split each one of these essays into about 200 token chunks based off of sentence endings, because what we don't want to do is, say this right here, let me highlight this, was like 200 tokens right here. We don't want to split the text right here. We want to split it at a nice even area or an even spot, like a sentence ending. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to need a few values off of this essay. So we're just going to go ahead and destructure this. We're going to take the title, we're going to take the URL, we're going to take the date, we're going to take the content off of essay because we just want an easier way to access that data. And now we're going to do some chunking stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an array. We're going to call it essay text chunks. And this is going to be an array of strings, not strings, string. And as I said, we're going to chunk this into about 200 token chunks. So we're going to run a little conditional if here, and we want to encode the content. And again, to get the token count when you encode a string, you do .length. Okay. And what we need to do is we need to define our chunk size. So I'm just going to make that a global constant up here. We're going to call it chunk size. We're going to do 200. So you can play around with different sizes. I found 200 to be pretty good for a lot of things. So we're going to stick with that here. And we're going to check if the length is greater than the chunk size. Okay, so if the token amount of the essay is greater, then we need to chunk it. Otherwise, we can just push the whole thing in. Okay, so let's handle the scenario where we need to chunk it. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this by sentence. We're going to do a const. We're going to name it split. We're going to run the split method here, which is just a function that takes in a string, and it's going to split that string into an array of a bunch of strings based on the parameter that we give it, right? So this, a period followed by a space that represents a sentence. Okay, and we want to keep track of the chunk text. We'll set that as an empty string yet because we haven't done anything with that. And now we want to loop over this split array. Okay, so we're going to loop over that, and then we want to have the sentence. By the way, I should mention this gray text that you see here, this is GitHub Copilot working. So if I just hit tab, like it completes that whole thing. It's not always 100% right, so you have to kind of look over it and make sure that the AI auto completion is correct. And a lot of this, spoiler alert, is correct, but I just kind of want to type through it because I think it helps you, see how I do it. So we're going to save the sentence. And then we need to, let's save this token length of the sentence. We'll call it sentence token length. We need to encode sentence.length. We need to get the chunk text token length. So again, it's an empty string right now, but over the course of this process, that's going to change. So we need to check that, and then we need to check if the chunk text token length plus the sentence token length, not less than, we want a greater than chunk size. If so, we need to push a new chunk, and then we need to reset the text. And we're actually good there. And then we need to do one more if statement here, where we go and check if the last sentence, so sentence.length -1, the last sentence matches this. And I have another regex here that I'm just going to copy and paste. I know you're loving these regexes. And if so, we're going to add this text, or the sentence plus a period space. Otherwise, we're just going to add a space. Okay. And then once that's done, we can push that chunk into SA chunks. And we're going to trim these just in case there's some extra white space on either end of these. We'll do that for both of them. Trimming is just a good way to clean stuff. Okay. So now we have chunked this into approximately 200 tokens. So it's sometimes going to go a little over. It's basically just saying if the next sentence, if the length of a chunk in here is greater than 200 tokens, don't add another sentence. Otherwise, add another sentence. That's all that's doing. And what we need to do now is we need to build. So if you remember in our type here, right now we only have the string, we only have the chunk content. What we need to do is we need to add these other properties to it. So we're going to go ahead and do that right here. We're actually going to do that down here. So if we create a new array, we'll call it SA chunks. Okay, so again, this is just the string. This is the content string. These are the full chunks. Okay, so those are PG chunks. And we don't want to set it to an empty array. What we want to do is we want to map over all those strings we got, which is why we called it text. You could call it like SA string chunks if that makes more sense to you. And we're going to loop over that. And we're going to create a new chunk, which is a PG chunk. And we need to add all those properties. So I'm just going to kind of tab through, and it should handle probably everything correctly. Content, content tokens, so it's doing the encoding correctly. And then if you remember, we have the one last property, which is the embeddings, and we're going to handle that in the next step. So I'm not going to worry about that for right now. So I'm going to save, and getting in, gotta return that chunk. Return chunk. Okay, so now we have all those chunks saved to SA chunks here. And what we need to do here is return the SA chunks. Looks like I have a little syntax error here we gotta sort out. Okay, these brackets match up. Looks like a parenthesis here. Yep, parenthesis there. Okay. And what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna do one more check. One thing we don't want here is we could have scenarios where it chunks through this whole essay, and then like the last chunk is just this tiny little string. So we're just gonna add a little check here where we don't want any chunks to have tokens under 100. So we're gonna perform that check here. So we're gonna do essay chunks dot length greater than 1. So if there's more than one chunk, we want to make sure none of them are under 100. We're going to need a loop through those. I equals 0, I is less than, say, chunks length. Okay, so we're just going to create a loop here, loop over that. Get the chunk here. We're going to get the previous chunk. and then if chunk.content tokens, so if the chunk tokens is less than 100 and a previous chunk exists, then what we want to do is we just want to add that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go prev chunk.content. We can use the plus equal here to just append it, and it's going to be plus space and then plus the chunk content. And then we need to go ahead and adjust the token count here on that previous chunk, and then we need to remove it from SA chunks since we just combined it, and that should be good. So what we need to do now is we're actually not returning SA chunks, we're returning the SA itself. So we're going to create the chunked SA, which is a PG SA, and we're just going to use the spread operator to spread in the SA, right? So we pass it in as a parameter right here. We're going to spread that in, and if you remember right here, we left chunks empty. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to fill that chunks array with all these chunks that we just made, and then we're going to return the SA, the chunked SA, that is. Chunked SA. Okay, so let's show you an example of chunked SA. Let's just go with the random one here. We'll say if I does not equal, let's just say like 7, we'll break out of here. And then if I run npm run scrape to show you what a chunked SA looks like. Once again, we're going to do a quick debug here. I obviously did something wrong. Console.log SA. Oh, the reason this is happening, this is actually funny, is it's literally breaking out of this on the first loop. Let's just do if I equals 7. Just log it. We'll do a lazy way. Okay, and I'm actually not getting the chunks in here, which is because we're getting the regular SA. We needed to return the chunked SA. So chunked SA equal await, and then we pass in the SA we got here into the get chunks function, then it returns that chunked SA. And now instead of pushing the unchunked SA, we're going to push the chunked SA. So now, this time it should work. Okay, good. I was getting a little worried there. So these are all the chunks, right? So you can see this thing has a lot of chunks in it. Okay, you can see that's the total count for the SA up here, and then we go to chunks, and then you see each one of these is just a nice manageable size, right? 178, 193, 181, right? So they're all pretty close to about that 200 limit we set. Okay, and what we can do here, we're gonna get rid of that log. We're gonna save this to a JSON file. So this is gonna scrape through all of them, get the links, pass the link into the SA. We're going to scrape all the data off of that SA. Then we're going to chunk the SA, and then we're going to push it to this final SAs array. And then we're going to create a JSON object, which is the PG JSON type. It's this right here. And that is going to be an object. And let's see, what did we say we were going to source? The tokens. So the way we need to get the tokens here is we're actually going to do a reduce. So if we do essays.reduce, this just goes through all the essays, grabs the token property off the essay, and then it just adds it all up. So we're just getting a big, a final count of the total tokens of all the essays, and then we're saving the essays, okay? And then what we want to do is we want to write this, so we're going to use the file system. Actually, let's go import that. Import fs from fs. So now we get access to our file system here. And if I tab here, we can see it's saving it as a JSON file. And what we want, where we want to save it to is scripts / let's call it pg.json. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my scrape here, npm run scrape, and this is going to give us all of that data that we need to scrape, and it's going to save it to a JSON file in the scripts. So I'm going to run that, and it's going to run. I'll be right back. This should work for you. I'll make sure it does. Let's see if we get our PG.json. Oh, what do you know? We already got our JSON. And you want to know why that is? It's because we're only getting one. We need to get all of them. So get rid of that if you wanted to test it. Make sure you're getting this entire for loop, which if I log the length of this links, I think it's 215 essays. Yeah, 215. Okay, so we're gonna get all 215 of those, and then I'll be right back with the updated JSON here. We got all of that data we wanted, all of these tokens, right? 609,817 tokens worth of essays, and it is a very big file here. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go ahead and create our embedding script, right? So what we need to do now is we need to take all of this text and we need to upload it to our database and get the embedding for it. So what we're going to do here is in scripts, we're going to create a new script, embed.ts. We're going to go back to our package.json, create a new script, call it embed. This one's going to be tss scripts/embed.ts. Okay, we're also going to do another thing. We're going to create a .env.local file. So these are the environment variables that you are going to need. And you're going to need 3 of them. You're going to need one for OpenAI, OpenAI_API_key. And you're going to need 2 from Supabase. It is going to be next public _Supabase _URL and Supabase. Do not put next public on this. Next public allows this to be exposed to our front end. We do not want that here. This is going to be service role key. And what you need to do, if you have not already done so, is let's bring this in. You need 2 things. You need to create an OpenAI account so that you can get an API key. And once you create your account, you can go create your key and you're going to paste that in right here. I'm not going to show you that because I'm not going to expose my key. So go ahead and do that if you haven't. And then the other thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to supabase.com and you're going to need to create a Supabase account. So Supabase is, if you're familiar with Firebase, it's very similar to that. If you're not, basically it's just a super easy way to get set up with a Postgres database. And of course they handle some other things too, right? Like they do authentication and whatnot. But essentially we want to use Supabase to host our database. And it's just, they provide a very easy UI to use their tools with, and it's very friendly for beginners and it's powerful for advanced users as well. So it's just a great tool. They also have a really generous free tier, so you get like 2 projects with a ton of usage. So you're not gonna have to pay anything with Supabase. It's gonna be totally free for here. So go create an account and come back and I'll show you what to do. Okay. So if you've gone ahead and created your account, it's going to bring you to your project screen, and it may ask you to create an organization. And then what you need to do is you need to hit new project. So I'm going to hit, I'm actually not going to create a new project because I already have mine set up. This is just like my embeddings playground here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And then on the left here, you're going to see this little sidebar. And what you want to do is you want to go into the SQL editor, and this is where we're going to create our database. So you can see I already have some snippets here from some other open source projects that I've been working on. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit this new query button. We're going to hit this drop down and we're going to rename it. I'm going to do all caps here. We'll just do Paul Graham test. I just want an easy way to identify the difference between my production one. So we're going to rename it. It's going to rename it here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to run all the SQL that we need to run. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is we actually need to create a new extension in Supabase here. So they have it native, which is really nice. So all you have to do is do create extension vector. And this just enables a Postgres extension called PG Vector, Postgres Vector. And this is just what's going to allow us to store embeddings into our database. Okay, so once you type this in, you can either just hit run right here or command enter. I'm going to do command enter. And you're going to see it's going to fail for me because I've already done this for you. I've already done this before, but this should work for you. And then we need to create our table. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some SQL here. And we want to do a create table. And we'll call this Paul_Graham essays maybe. Actually, I'm just going to do Paul Graham, a little shorter to work with here. Okay. Open those parentheses, we need an ID. It's just going to be a big serial, and it's going to be the primary key. This table. And then this is going to be very similar to in fact, identical to this PG chunk. Because again, this is what we're storing in our database. We've got essay title. We've got essay URL, which is text. We have the essay date. That's text as well. Content, that's text. Content tokens, content_tokens, that's text. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not text. It's going to be a big int. And then we need our embedding, which is going to be a type vector. And you're going to have this parentheses 1536. So OpenAI's embedding model gives us a vector of this size. So you can kind of think of it like as an array with 1,536 numbers in them. So we're just going to explicitly tell it that that's what it's going to be expecting. Okay, and if we run this, we're going to see success. If we go to this sidebar again, if you go to your table editor, you're going to see your table here. So now we have that Paul Graham table. And let me make this bigger. We're going to go full screen for a sec. What you want to do is, it says RLS is not enabled. I recommend that you turn this on. So it's going to bring you over here, and you're just going to do enable RLS. This stands for row level security, and it just makes your database secure. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to pop back into the SQL editor. I'm going to go side view again. Okay, now we can get rid of that. Since we created our table. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create our vector-based or embedding-based search similarity function. So we're going to create a Postgres function. We're going to create replace function. We're going to call this Paul_Graham_search. Okay, parentheses. And this function is going to take 3 parameters. We're going to take our query embedding. So this is the embedding that we're going to pass in, which if you remember to that example I showed you at the very start of this video, it's that search query vector. Okay, we need a similarity threshold as a parameter. Threshold, that's a float. And then we need a match count, and that's going to be an int. So what this parameter does, the similarity one, is when you take the embedding of your search query and then you compare that to the embedding of one of these chunks, you get a number. And it's basically from 0 to 1, and it measures kind of how similar your query is to the embedding of the chunk. So like closer to 1 means the more similar. If it's like, 0.9, that's pretty similar, and if it's 0.1, it's like very dissimilar. So that's what that is. And the match count is just going to be how many results we want to return. Okay, so this is going to return table, returns table, and it's going to return, this is just all the data we want to get off of it. So we want to get it, basically we're just going to like repeat what we just did in that last create table step. So I'm just going to run through this real quick. Say date text, content text. I'm trying to think what else do we have. Content tokens, which is a big int. And lastly, we're going to get the similarity. So this is the similarity that we're calculating here, and that's going to be a float. Okay, and then we need PLP SQL here, PLPG SQL. I could type as $, begin. Okay, so this is just some syntax stuff that we're doing to create this similarity function, and then we need to select from the Paulgram table. We need to get the ID, and this we're just matching these so that they correspond to the right thing. Be really careful when you're doing this, because I see a lot of people run into errors, and then it turns out to just be these didn't match up correctly. So you just make sure you're matching them up correctly. So we need essay title. We need Paulgram.essay date. Oh, see, I would have made a mistake here. This is URL. Paulgram. Now we'll get the date. Essay date. Paulgram. Content. I know this is a lot of typing, but this is just some of the boring part we got to grind through. Content tokens. Feel free to just fast forward this and go through it. Don't fast forward this though. This is how we're going to get the similarity here. So we're going to do 1 minus Paulgram.embedding. Okay, the embedding of the text chunk. We're going to use this syntax here. This is the syntax for the cosine similarity, which is the function we're going to be running here. Embedding, and then we're going to call it as similarity. Okay, and that's going to be from the Paulgram table. Where, now we need our where clause, where 1 minus Paulgram dot embedding cosine similarity query embedding is greater, so we're checking we're making sure it's greater than the similarity threshold. Similarity underscore, is that the syntax we use? Yeah, underscore threshold. Now let's order this by the similarity. We're almost done here, I promise. Query embedding. And then we want to limit it by that match count, right? We give the match count parameter. That's the limit of responses here. Okay, we need to tell this to end. We need to do $, not 44, $. This. Okay, now if we run this, saving our changes here, this should work. Okay, I clearly made a syntax error. It's because I need a semicolon here, I think. Yep, okay. So now we've created our Paulgram search function. And again, what all this stuff we just typed out does is it's just calculating the similarity between the search query that's coming in and the embedding of the PG chunk. Okay, so let's get rid of that for now. And let's hop into our embed file here. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do load env config. And this is going to load the environment variables in the script so that we can use that. And what we're actually going to need to do is we're going to need to install this. So we're going to do npm at next/env -V. That's a dev dependency. Boom. Okay. So that's here and here. If we save that, that should auto import for us. And we're going to create a function called generate embeddings. Okay, that's going to be an async function, and it's going to take in the entirety of the essays. So pgsa array as the type, and arrow function here, close that. And we're also going to create a self-invoking async function down here, like so. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to load that JSON file in here. Okay, so I'm just going to go const JSON, and that's pg.json. And we're going to import file system from fs equal, it's going to be this thing right here, json.parse fs.read file sync script / pg.json. Okay, that's where it is. And UTF-8 is the encoding here. Okay, and then we're going to call await generate embeddings with grabbing the essays off of that JSON object. Very cool. And what we need to do as well, we need to install OpenAI in here. So we're going to run npm I OpenAI. Once again, dev dependency here. Okay, and we need to configure OpenAI. So it's const configuration equal new configuration, and it takes in our API key, and then we're going to get that as process.env.openai _API _key. So again, you should have put your API key in that environment variable. Save that. Actually, we need to import configuration. Not that. From OpenAI. We're also going to need OpenAI API, like so. And then we'll create a new variable called OpenAI, which is going to be new OpenAI API with our configuration passed in here. Okay. We also need to install Supabase. We're going to go npm I, and I have the package name here. It is at supabase /supabase.js. I'm going to create our Supabase here, which uses create client. And then you have to pass in two things in here. And these are the two environment variables that we set up. So it's the next _ public Supabase URL. And it is what I'm trying to think what the other one we did was Supabase Supabase service role key. And we're going to do a little TypeScript magic. We're going to do a parentheses after each of these just to let it know that it exists. And then we have to import this create client from Supabase. Perfect. All right. So we got a lot of that setup done. And now what we need to do is we need to loop through the essays. I'm going to skip the essay. We need to loop through the chunks of that essay. So essay.chunks.length. Make sure you use a different, don't use I. And now we need to get the chunk. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create an embedding request. So we're going to call OpenAI.create embedding. And this is going to take two parameters. So first we need to give it a model. So the embedding model that we want to use is text embedding -eta-002. So this is the embedding model. And then we have to give it the input, which is our content, which is chunk.content, sorry. Okay, so that's the embedding response. The way you can grab the embedding off of that is with this syntax here, embedding. We're going to destructure that off of embedding response.data.data. And then what we can do is we can upload it to Supabase. Wait, Supabase. And we're going to go a new line here for some formatting. And it's going to be from, so this is pass in the table name, so Paulgram, or whatever else you named it. We're going to do an insert, give it an object, and now we need to give it all of these properties. So SA title, SA URL, SA date, the content tokens, and the embedding. Okay, so that'll save our chunk with the embedding added onto it to our database. And then we're going to want to return. I'm just going to make sure we get that data back, just in case we want it. This needs to be a string. Okay, very cool. Let's just do one quick error handling thing. So if error, we'll log an error. Otherwise, we want to log the data. Maybe let's just do it this way. Let's do like saved IJ. We can kind of keep track of this as it's happening. And then what we want to do, just to avoid possible rate limits with the OpenAI API, is we're going to return a promise like this. And basically all this is doing is it's running this code, and then you're just waiting a second. So this is in milliseconds. So I'm actually just going to do this down to like 300 milliseconds. So sometimes if you run into an error when you're embedding stuff, it might be the rate limit thing. So you might just need to increase this. But I've never had an issue with it here. Okay. And this should do everything we need it to do. And one thing I'm going to show you really quick is just let's double back and make sure that these environment variables are set up. So once again, you need your OpenAI API key. And here, I'm about to go get mine and paste it in here. And then with the Supabase ones, the place you're going to access these is in your project here. So let's go back over to Supabase on the right, go to project settings, and then go to the API tab here. And you're going to find everything you need. So this first one is going to be your project URL. This is public. So, don't worry, you don't have to keep this secret from anybody. This is often exposed to your client and whatnot. So you want to copy that. You want to paste it here. And then the service role, this one you do want to keep secret. Okay, so treat this like a password, don't commit it to Git. Keep it to yourself. So I'm about to go get my OpenAI key and then reveal this, copy this, and paste it here, and I'll be right back. The OpenAI key and my service role here into that env file, and I saved it. So now this should be working. So what we're going to do is in Supabase, we're going to navigate back over to our table editor. I'm going to navigate back into that Paulgram table. And what we should be able to do here, assuming there's no errors, there might be one, we have to do a debug here, is we should be able to run npm run embed, and then we should be able to start seeing all of our chunks populating into our database. So let's run that, and okay, it's saving. So everything's working. We set everything up correctly. So let's refresh, and let's go full screen here for a sec. So as you can see, everything is coming in exactly how we wanted it. All that hard work we did, setting up this table, running those SQL scripts, scraping all of those essays and chunking them and all that stuff, is now paying off. We're getting that data in here. You see we're getting this embedding. You can see it's an array of numbers here. We're getting the content, which is that chunked text. We're getting the content tokens. We're getting every single thing that we wanted in here. So if I refresh, we're going to see even more. Okay, so I'm going to go side view here again. And you can see this just totally running through the whole thing. So this is going to take a bit, right? We're running through literally hundreds of these. And just as a small note, these embeddings do cost OpenAI credits, so you will get billed, but embeddings are very cheap. It's the cheapest thing you can do with OpenAI's API. I want to say like for $1, you can embed like 1,000 pages. It might even be more. It's super cheap. So I think this whole thing is probably going to cost like 10 cents. Just a small note. So I'm going to let this run, and then I will be back, and then we can finally get to building the actual UI for this thing. So congrats on hanging in there. You did it. If you encounter any errors, again, I have the GitHub repo link. Just peruse through those files and make sure all your syntax is correct. And if you run into any huge bugs, you can always reach out to me in the comments below, or you can find me on Twitter at McKayWrigley, and just hit me up, and I try to get back to everybody as fast as I can. So if you run into errors, let me know. Otherwise, let this embedding script run all the way, and you can continue to see all the magic of seeing your different chunks get uploaded into your database here. So I'll be back. Your script should have hopefully run successfully, and now you should, if we go full screen here, you should have your table here with all your embeddings. As you can see, we have a ton of records here to work with. So one thing we need to do really quick is we need to do one more step with SQL. So we're going to go back into our SQL editor, and we're going to do one more thing, which is we need to create an index with pgvector on our database. So we're going to create an index on our table name, which is Paulgram. Oops, running into some autocomplete stuff here. Okay, new line using IVF flat, embedding column, vector underscore cosine ops, and then you want to type with lists equal 100. So all this is doing is creating an index on our database, and it's just helping us increase the performance of our similarity search that we're going to be doing. Okay, so you want to run that. So I'm running it right now. Just got to run through all those rows and create the index. Should be successful. If you get an error, maybe you forgot like a semicolon, just make sure the syntax is exactly as so. And we should have everything we need to go create our front end here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install two packages that we're going to need. And this is not a dev dependency, so don't put that -d flag here. You want event source -parser and then space, and then you want a package called indent. So event source parser is going to help us handle some of our streaming capabilities, and then indent is just it's just a little utility for template strings and cleaning up some spacing, which we'll be using for our prompt. Okay, so once you have that, we're going to do a couple things here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our pages and then into this API directory. And what we're going to do is we're going to rename this hello.ts to search. So this is where we're going to create the API endpoint that handles our similarity search. So this is where we're going to fetch the most similar chunks here that we embedded from the embedding of our search parameter that we're going to pass in. So we're going to go ahead and just get rid of all this. And what we're going to do here is we need to configure our runtime here. So we're going to create a config object here. And you just want to set runtime to edge. So with Next.js, you can, in versatile hosting, you can take advantage of edge functions. And they're just super snappy. They're super fast. The latency is really low. So you end up just with really fast API responses, which is great for streaming. So we're going to take advantage of that here. What you need to do is we're going to create a handler. It's going to be async, and it's going to take in a request parameter. We're going to type that correctly, and it returns a promise with a response. Okay, and then you need to export that as default. There we go. And you'll see you're getting a little error complaint here. That's just because we haven't returned anything yet in our function. So we need to set up a try catch block. And oops, I accidentally did parentheses here instead of brackets. So if our function fails up here, we just want to return an error. So let's just have our message be error, and that's going to be a 500 for the status. Okay, and then here we're going to want to handle that the search. The first thing we need to do is we need to get our parameters that are coming in off of the body. So in this case, we're just going to be taking one, which is that search query, which is going to come in as a string. So let's grab that. It's going to be rec.json as a query, which is a string. So that's the only parameter that we're going to be passing in here. And then what we need to do is we need to create an OpenAI API response. We're going to do a similar thing if we open up our embedding. We're going to do basically the same thing here with just a little bit different syntax, just because we're not going to be importing that package in here. If you want to use it, feel free, but you'll see we don't use it for streaming, so I just don't want to confuse anybody. So we're just going to do a basic fetch request here. And what we want to do is we want to do the v1 but slash embeddings. Okay, and that's going to be the endpoint we need. And we need to pass it a couple things, right? So it's going to be a post request. We need to set some headers. So the content type will be application JSON, and then we need to pass in our API key here, which again, if you set that in your environment variable file, the .env.local file, you should have it accessible like so, except there's no underscore there. We're just going to let TypeScript know it's there. All right, that looks good. And then we just need to pass it a body. So if you remember, we pass it two parameters. We pass it the model. Let's grab that model. And then we pass it an input, which is what we want to embed. So we're going to stringify that body. We're going to pass that model in right there. It's the text embedding ADA002 model. And as our input, the thing we want to embed is we want to embed that query. So we're going to go ahead and embed that query. And close that up. And then we need to get the JSON off of that response. Perfect. And then we need to get the embedding off of that JSON, which is going to be json.data, and it's going to come back as an array. So you want to get the first item in that array, and then you want to get the embedding off of the object in that array. Okay, so now we have access to our embedding. So the next thing we're going to do right here is we're going to access Supabase. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into the root of my directory here, or my project here. We're going to create a new directory called utils, and then we're going to create a new file called index.ts. And what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to import that create client from Supabase. And we're going to need to export this because we want to use it in that API route. Which is going to be Supabase, we'll call it. We're actually going to call it Supabase admin. And the reason why I'm calling it Supabase admin is just to remind you that you're using your administrative service role key in here, which you want to keep secret. So just like we did in embeddings where we passed, I believe we created the client. Yeah. So we're basically doing the same thing here. I'm just naming it admin, which you could do in here as well. But just to remind you, just to keep this nice and secret, don't expose that. Cool. So now we can import that here. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the data off of this Supabase call. We'll maybe refer to it as chunks just because what we're doing is we're fetching these chunks in here, and we'll just be consistent with how we named those. We want to grab the error off of there too, just to handle that. And you want to do await Supabase admin, So we're importing this Supabase admin that we just created, and we're going to make a RPC call off of this. So this is going to take two arguments. The first is it's going to be the name of that SQL function that we created. So if you remember back when not this one, but the one before this, where we created our database function. So if you want to just make sure that exists and that you actually created it, what you can do is you can click over here on this database and then click into functions to see your database functions that you made. So you should have created this one, the polygram search function that had those 3 parameters. And so what we need to do is we need to let it know we want to call this function, and we're going to give a second argument, which is an object of these 3 parameters. So the query embedding is just going to be that embedding that we just created via our query. So that's our first argument. And then similarity threshold you can kind of play around with. I'll just do like 0.5 for now, but basically the higher this is basically the more strict you're being on how similar the passage needs to be to the query and vice versa. And then we have the match count parameter. So we'll fetch 5 of those. That sounds good. And what we want to do now is we just want to make sure we check for an error. So if there is an error, maybe we'll just return that, and let's log it just in case there is an error so we can debug it easier. Otherwise, we want to stringify these chunks because that's what we want to send as the response, and then we'll just have a 200 status, which is a successful response. Okay, so that's our API handler for fetching all of these chunks that we need. So we're going to perform a similarity search from our query on the 5 most similar passages. So now what we need to do is we need to create one more file in our API folder here, and we're going to call it answer.ts. Okay, and this one is going to be set up similarly, right? So we're going to need this edge function configuration, and then we want kind of the same handler syntax. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. And then of course, don't forget to export default that. And what this is going to do is it's going to handle fetching the API chat request from OpenAI, and it's going to handle streaming it back to the client. So we're going to do another try catch block here. Just identical setup as we just did. And then in this one, we need to fetch the prompt, because this is what we're going to pass in to this request. And we're going to do await rec.json, and prompt, again, this is going to be a string. So we're gonna construct the prompt on the front end, and then we'll pass the prompt in. And what we're gonna need to do here is we're gonna pause. We're gonna go back into our utility file here that we created. So under this Supabase admin, what we need to do is we need to create a little function that's gonna handle the request to OpenAI and then handle parsing and streaming those tokens that we get. So we're going to create a new function, and this is going to be OpenAI stream. It's going to be an async function that takes in one prompt, or one parameter, which is prompt, like so. And we need to do a couple things here, really 2 things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new API request to OpenAI. And in this case, we want to hit the chat completions endpoint. So we're going to do v1/chat/completions. And this is going to be a post request. We got to set the headers again, JSON, pass in our API key. And then for the body in this one, it's going to be a couple things. We need the model. So we want to do GPT 3.5. So this is that model that's used in like Chat GPT and stuff. So we're gonna use that model. Then it's gonna take in a messages parameter. And messages is an array of objects. And each one of these objects has 2 properties. It has a role, which can be system, user, or assistant. And then it's gonna take in a content, which is just the text that is gonna come in. So like, what you normally want to do is you want to start it off with a message that is a system message, and this is effectively like the system prompt. So this is kind of like your base prompt. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come up with some instructions that kind of tell the chat model what we want. So let's just go with like, you are a full assistant that answers queries about Paul Graham's essays. And let's change this to backticks here. We'll make this a template string so we can handle this apostrophe. Let's say like respond in, I don't know, 3 to 5 sentences. So this is just a really basic starter prompt. Feel free to make this more complex if you want, but we'll just roll with that for now. And then we're going to pass it a second message, which this time is going to be a role of user. So this is us. And then in this case, the content's going to be the prompt. So this is what we're going to pass into it. Okay. And then we need just a couple more things here. We want to set a max tokens limit. So somewhere in like the 1 to 200 range is good. So I'm just going to do like 150 because we don't want our responses to be too long or too short. So that sounds good. We need to set a temperature. I'm going to set the temperature to 0. So temperature basically determines how deterministic your responses are. So for example, with 0 here, if I pass in the same prompt every time to this, it's pretty much going to give me the same response every time. Whereas if my temperature was higher, like say we went as high as like 0.9, then the responses I get would be different every time. So that's kind of how that works. And then we need to set one more parameter here, which is we need to set stream to true because we're going to be wanting to stream this. Okay. Let's just check to make sure that we actually get a good response here. So let's say if response.status does not equal 200. So if it's not a success, we'll throw an error. Otherwise, we want to handle the stream. So to handle the stream, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an encode and a decode object here using these constructors. And then we want to decode. These are just going to help us handle our streaming of the tokens. And then what we want to do is we want to create a new stream. So we're just going to create a variable called stream. And this is going to be a new readable stream. Okay. And this is what we're going to pass into this. To start, we're going to pass a start, and you need to pass in this controller here. And we're going to create an onParse function here, which is going to take an event, which is either a parsed event or a reconnect interval. And then in this onParse function, we want to check if the event type is an event. So we'll do if event type equal event. And if it's an event, we want to get the data off of it. Create a new variable called data. We'll get the data off of that. And the first check we're going to do here is we're going to check if data equals done in brackets like this. And the reason we're checking for this is the way the OpenAI API works with streaming is once all the tokens are done streaming, it's going to send this, and then you're going to know that you can terminate your stream. Okay, so if the stream is finished, we want to close it, and then we're going to return. Otherwise, your stream would just never close. And then if that's not the case, then we want to try and see if there's a chunk on here. So we're going to get the JSON off of that data, and we want to get the text off of that JSON. So, and that's going to be in the format JSON.choices. It's going to be an array. So get the first item in there, and then you want to do .delta.content. So that's going to get the text off of that. And then we need to create a new variable called queue. And so this is just queuing up each token, or just this is just how the stream's handling sending it. So we're going to queue up the encoder. This should be decoder. There we go. So we're going to queue up that text, stream it in, and then we want to tell the controller to unqueue that. It's going to queue that. And queue is a weird word to spell. There we go. And then we'll just catch the error there. Otherwise, we wanted to have the controller handle the error. Controller. having some tough time spelling here. Pass in the air. Controller. No, controller. Then we need a break. Okay. Once we've done that check, outside the onParse function, we create a parser. So we're going to use this create parser, and then we're going to pass in our parse function to this. And so this create parser, this is just all these things are coming from the event source parser package that we installed. So that's what that package is doing. It's handling all this stuff for us. It's really nice. Okay, we're going to loop over those chunks. Chunk of res.body. I'm going to cheat a little bit and just type this as an and. Actually, I think I used response here, didn't I? Yeah, response.body. And now we want to feed this to the parser. So we're going to do parser.feed decoder. So we want to decode it and decode each chunk. And then this handles our stream. So this, just in summary, at a basic level, just this handles each token as it comes in and creates a streamer so that we can consume on the client. And then we just want to return our stream. Okay, so that's gonna do all the magic that we need to fetch the response from the API and then handle the streaming so that we can get some good UX going on. So we're gonna go back into our answer.ts file in the API, and now we can utilize the stream that we just created. So we're just gonna create a new variable here called stream. Seems fitting. Stream. And that's going to await OpenAI stream, passing in the prompt as that parameter. If you remember, we were passing in a prompt as a string. Okay. And now we want to return it so that our client can consume the stream. So we're going to return the stream. Awesome. So now that we've got that ready to go, we can go actually build the user interface for this. So let's go do that. So what we're going to do, we'll close all these files for now, and I'm going to go over to a localhost 3000 tab. We're going to run npm run dev to start up our development server here, and you're going to see an error here. So if you remember earlier on in the video, we deleted this home.module.css file. So we need to go into our index.tsx file, and you'll see we're importing that and it doesn't exist. Let's get rid of that. We'll save that, and styles is not defined. So what we're going to do is everything in this main tag, I'm going to lower this a little bit. We're going to delete. So we'll just get rid of everything in there. And sweet. So that's working. Let's give it a title really quick. I'm just going to call this Paulgram GPT. Let's give it a description. AI Q&A on PG's essays. Okay, so you can see our title's up there now. Okay, so what we need to do now is we're actually getting rid of this interfont thing. And we're going to create the UI for this. So we're going to need a couple of state variables. So we're going to need a way to keep track of the state of our query. We need to keep track of the answer, right? So this is the response that we're going to get back from the API. We need to keep track of the chunks, right? So these are the chunks we'll get back from our similarity search. And let's handle a loading variable just for a little bit of UX. It should automatically import it. You've just, as a small note, maybe auto imports you don't have set up, but you can just import it like so. Okay, everything looks good here. We're actually going to type this. We're going to bring in our good friend PG chunk and make sure we just let it know that these chunks are supposed to be an array of PG chunks. And then we're going to create a function that's going to handle our similarity search. So let's create a function, do handle search. And this is going to be async because it's going to hit our API. And we need to do a couple things. So let's get the response off of this. You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm just going to call this handle answer. We're going to do everything in one function. I think that's just going to be a little bit easier to follow for you. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to do search response. So the first thing we're going to do here is we are going to fetch the most similar passages to our query. So we're going to create a fetch here. So await fetch request. And the way you hit your API endpoints when you have a Next.js project like this is you just want to do /API. So we're in this directory right here, and then / the file name without the extension. So we're going to hit the search file, and then we need to pass in our method and our post. So it is a post request, and we do not need to pass in anything else there on the headers, but we do need to pass in our body. And our body in this case is just going to be that query. So just to confirm, we are expecting this to come in as query as a string, which is exactly what we're doing here. Now let's just do a quick check to make sure that this response came in okay. So let's do if search response does not equal okay. We'll throw an error here. How about that? No, we're going to do a return so that this function just stops. It's a little cleaner. Otherwise, we want to get the results, and the results are going to come in as an array of PG chunks. So again, if we go back into our search API file here, we are, sure enough, we're sending those chunks on the response. Okay, so we're grabbing those results, which are an array of PG chunks. And what we want to do now is we want to set our state to the results, right? So now we have access to those chunks once they've loaded in. And the way we can confirm that this is working is we can actually just log those results. But first of all, we're going to need a way to call this function and a way to import or to input our query. So let's go write some TSX code here. So what we're going to do is maybe just create a parent div, and I know the actual site looks a little bit fancier than this. I'm going to just keep it super bare bones just because the goal of this video is to show you how this works, not to make it look pretty. If you are interested in kind of some more advanced front-end stuff, maybe let me know in the comments, because I'm more than happy to do like a follow-up video where I teach you how to do all that stuff too. If you want a little bit more of a front-end heavy video, I'm happy to do a part 2. Just let me know, but for now I'm going to keep this bare bones. Okay, it's going to be a type text. The value is going to be our query. Again, we set a state variable to query here. And then on the onChange, we need to set the query to the value. And that should be good. It's not showing up here. That's probably a style thing. So let's do, yeah, see, we're getting some weird styles. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have Tailwind auto come up with some styles. Maybe we'll just do like a border. Yeah, let's just throw a border on that maybe. And what we could do is we could do like a border. Let me just make sure really quick that this is all coming in correctly. Okay, everything's set up good. So we'll just make our text black just so it's a little bit easier to see. So when we type into here, our text will be black. I actually think that's default. What we really want is we want like a border black. Border gray works too. Okay, so we just have an input here. And then we need a button. And I guess we'll just auto use the Copilot classes here. And when this is clicked, it's going to run our handle answer function. Okay, so that's all that's going to do. And we'll just do like submit. And then we'll close that button. Okay, so again, I know this is like really bad or whatever, or it doesn't look very pretty, but we're just trying to get this to work. And what we're actually doing, we're going to do a flex call just so this is a column. Okay, looks nice. Maybe we even set like a width of I don't know what 200 pixels looks like. So like, let's do 350. Perfect. So that's going to work. And what we want to do is we want to go over to our console, our developer console, and we just want to check and make sure that we're getting the search results when this runs. So let's go ahead and type in, how do I start a startup? And before we run this, let me just explain what's happening. So we've inputted that into our input. We're accessing that with query here, which is going to be passed in to our search response here. Right, this handle answer is getting called when we click the button. Then we're hitting a search endpoint, which is performing similarity search on our database over here. So what we should get is we should get an embedding of this text. It should take that embedding and it should perform similarity search on the embeddings of all of these passages and then return the 5 most similar, assuming it is above this similarity threshold. Okay, so let's see if everything we've built is working. And what do you know? We get 5 most similar responses. So as you can see, the similarity on this first one is 0.868. And again, that's from 0 to 1. So this is pretty similar. So that's a good result, right? If we go to the next one, you're going to see it's a little bit less. And then if we go to like the last one. So these are all above 0.85, which is pretty good. And we're getting all that data that we set in our database, which we can now use to inject into the prompt, right? Because that's kind of the whole point of this, is we want to get these results because we want to inject that into the prompt so that we can get a good answer. Okay, so now we're going to create the call to our answer endpoint, right? So what we need to do here is, instead of search response, we'll call it answer response, right? And same syntax, /API/answer, since that's the file we want to hit. Post request, set the header, and then this body is not going to be query. If you remember, we called this prompt, so we're going to pass in prompt, and you're going to notice, you've probably figured this out by now, prompt doesn't exist because we haven't created it. So what we're going to do between these two steps is we're going to create our prompt. And if you remember, we installed that indent package. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepend indent. We're going to import that in with a template string after this. And all indent does is it lets you use template strings here. And if I create like new lines like this, it's just going to clean up some of the white space on these lines. So if you would pass in this string without indent here, you know, if I just did test, it's going to, instead of passing the text, you know, like this, instead of, you know, receiving it something like that, it would have all this white space from here. So it just cleans that up a little bit, which is a good thing to do when you're creating your prompt. So we're going to create our prompt, and we're going to say, use the following passages to answer the query. And we're going to inject our query in here, right? So that's going to show our query right there. And then what we want to do is we want to take these results that we got in here, and we're going to map over them. So let's go results. And again, template strings let you, which are just what these backticks are, they let you inject variables by using this $bracket syntax into a string. So that's what we're doing here. Hopefully you've got onto that by now. That's what I've been using throughout this whole video. But what we want to do is we want to map over that. And then for each one of these chunks, we want to return the content. And then we want to join it by a new line. So what this is going to do is, for each one of these chunks that we fetched, all 5 of them, it's going to grab the content in here, and we're basically just going to create like a list of them with the new line. So I will log that prompt to show you what happens here. I'm just going to comment that out so we don't make that call. Clear the log. And if I do it again, you'll see this is our prompt, right? So use the following passage to answer the query. There's our query. And then we added all of our passages, excuse me, into here. Okay. So that's basically the context that we're going to be using to handle this response. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fetch the response here. And now all we have to do here is we have to handle the streaming. So let's do a check similar to we did above to make sure answers coming in. And then we have to do a couple of things to handle the stream. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a reader. It's going to be data.getReader. I'm sorry, I forgot to access the data off of the response body. So we got to get the answer response dot body. Okay. And this is complaining to us. Data is possibly null. So what we can just do is do a quick check. If not data, return. That'll go away. Sweet. And then we need to create a decoder for this. This is the same thing we just did in our utility function for the OpenAI stream. Just a new text decoder. And we're going to create a variable here called done, which is going to be a Boolean that's going to handle, if we go back into our utils, it's just going to check for this done, right? So we're just going to see if the stream closed. Okay, and so while not done, so while we still have tokens coming into us from the stream, what we want to do is we want to get the value, and then we want to get done, and we'll just refer to that as like done reading, and that's going to be await reader, and then we want to read from the stream here. Okay. We want to set our done variable to done reading. And the reason we're casting this as done reading is because we've already declared a variable called done. That's why we're doing that. We want to get the chunk value, right? So this is the text of the chunk. And again, the chunk is just referencing the streamed in text. And then what we want to do is we want to set the answer, right? So this is our state variable answer to the previous value. So this is what the syntax does. It takes the previous value of our state, and then it takes the previous value and it adds the new value to it. So that's what that does. And so that's going to run through our whole stream. And then when our stream is complete, it is going to close it. And then instead of true, or instead of returning false here, it's going to return true at the end. Then this variable is going to become true, and then it's going to kick us out of this while loop. So it's going to wrap up so we don't get like an infinite loop here. And then that's going to handle our answer. So what we can do down here to show you that, let me, I'm going to create a div here. I'm going to give it a margin top of 4, just for a little bit of spacing there. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if it's loading, we're going to want to have let's put a loading div in there just to show that it's loading. Otherwise, we want to put in our answer, and we just want to close that div. Okay, and then we just need to handle the loading stuff in here. All right, so we want to set loading to true at the start of this, and then at the end of this, we want to set loading to false. And if we do this, we should now have a fully working little proof of concept here, where if I do, how do I start a startup? It should fetch the most similar chunks from our database. It should inject the content, the text content of those chunks into our prompt. It should feed that prompt into our answer request. It should get our answer, and then it should give that back to us in the format of a stream that we're going to decode in here and display to the user as it comes in. So let's try a different one. Let's do, how do I raise money? Hit submit. It's going to be loading. And as you can see, I'm getting an error. So we probably just did something wrong here. So let's go check and see what we did wrong. So we're getting a 500 error. So let's do a couple things. Let's make sure our prompt is coming in. Okay, we'll do some debugging. And see how this loading didn't resolve? What I'm also going to do is just do some little UX stuff here. So in each one of these, we want to set loading to false if it threw an error. So like if I copy and paste this, refresh, run it again, it's going to fail and it'll get rid of that loading. So that's just a little quick UX thing we'll do as we debug this. I accidentally just exposed my API key, so I'm just going to record this last minute. So I went through and tried to figure out what the error was, and I found it super quick, and it was a tiny little thing. So what we need to do is we need to go into our utility file here where we do the OpenAI stream and see where I have the model specified. This model is actually called GPT 3.5 Turbo. So you have to add this dash turbo onto here. And now we have the model correct. So basically what was happening was we were trying to request a response from a model that doesn't exist. Okay, so now this should work. So if I do what is a hacker, we should be getting a response here. It's loading. Cool, so we got our response, and sure enough, this is a pretty good result. So you'll notice that this didn't stream. So as the very kind of final step of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to build a nice little component in here that can handle streaming with a nice little fade-in animation. So we're going to create a new folder called components, and in here we're going to create a new folder called answer. We're going to create an answer component, which is going to have two files. It's going to have answer.tsx, and it's going to have module.css. So in our answer component, we are going to create an interface here just to type in the props that we're going to be passing into this component. So it's going to receive one prop, which is text, which is a string. And we're going to export this component. We're going to name it answer. This is going to be a functional component in React with props like so. We're going to destructure text off the props there. And we're going to return a few things. So the first thing we're going to do in here is we're going to keep track of the words that are coming in from this text in a state variable. And then we want to do a use effect like so. And we want text to be a dependency here. So every time the text changes, we are going to set words to text.split at each word. Okay, so we're just going to get an array of all of the words in here because we're going to do an animation off of that. Okay, so we're going to throw a div in here, and then we're going to map over these words. All right, so we're mapping over this array, which is a word of each text that we passed into this component. And we're going to return a span with key index. We're going to pass in a, sorry, let me put this on a new line, a class name, which is going to equal to styles.fadeIn. And we're going to create that in our module file here. So let's create our fade-in class. It's got to have an animation of fade in over 0.5 seconds, ease in out forwards. So this is just a little animation we're creating. We want the opacity to start in at 0, aka we don't want it to show. And you have to do these little keyframes for the fade in, starting at opacity 0, going to opacity 1. That's all you need there. What you do need to do though is you need to import styles from that module, and that's a lowercase a. Oops. Styles dot fade in. There we go. Okay. And we're also going to do a little custom inline styling here, which we want to throw an animation delay. And the delay is just going to be equal to the index times 0.1 seconds. So you can play around with this number right here and this number right here to get kind of different fade-in speeds. This is the one I thought was best, which is the only reason we're doing that. And we want to put in the word in here with the space because we need to separate those words. So now we need to go back into our index.tsx file, and instead of rendering in the answer, just the raw answer here, we want to be the answer component, and we have to pass in answer as the text prop, right? Because we need this as text. We'll save that, and now you can see we're getting this beautiful animation that's streaming this in. So that's a brief summary. I say it brief. This is probably like a 90-minute video. Probably like 2 hours at this point. But let me know what you think. You should now have all the tools you need to create this for all sorts of different data sets. You know, you can scrape text from PDFs. You can scrape text from websites. You know, you want to use like Wikipedia or something. Anything you want. You know, if you want to use like podcast audio, transcripts from YouTube videos, the possibilities are endless, but this shows you how to do all of the steps from embedding your text to coming up with the data set, to doing the streaming, to building just a basic UI here. Again, you can, as a challenge, make this a lot prettier. If you do want me to follow up and do a user interface video, do things like, you know, make the loaders prettier, make this prettier. You know, I have the little setting screen and whatnot in the production version of this. If there's anything I didn't cover in here that you would like me to cover, just let me know. And if enough people want it, I will 1000% do it. So hopefully you found this informative. Again, this was my first video I've put out. My personal preference is I like sort of the live coding style as opposed to a more edited version, but I know these can get a little bit long-winded, so you know, if you prefer me to really cut down or skip over things and not live code it, let me know, and maybe I can do like 2 versions of each every time.